cycle right after the midterm, so after last year's election, you may have seen a lot of celebration and a lot of people writing about this historic voter turnout, right, of young people in 2018. It was incredible, right? Our generation, especially after 2016, we were like, this is enough, right? We need to stand up, we need to go out and vote, we need to get involved in campaigns, we need to get involved in local government, because clearly, folks in office are not listening to us, right? Some of you may have done that in the past few years. And so a lot of people are really happy, and studies have shown that, again, this past election was like the highest youth turnout rate for midterms, basically, I think almost ever. But since November 2018, in the past year, there have been news articles coming out of states across the country, including New York, that are also talking about the reactions to that celebration, right? We were celebrating the youth community, all the amazing things that you all did to get out the vote and to talk about these issues in your local community. On the flip side of that, there are also folks throughout the country who are actively working to suppress the youth vote. Both hard voter suppression, which is things like, you probably can think of voter ID laws, right? But also what is known as soft voter suppression, which are things that are put in place that you may not realize make it harder for people to vote, but in practice, when you show up, you realize you can't cast your ballot, or you have to fill out some sort of provisional ballot, right, which may or may not be counted. So news started coming out that people are saying voting wars are coming to campus, right? The student vote is surging, yet people are suppressing it. And so I finally think we're in a turning point where people are taking the youth vote and youth voting rights, your voting rights, seriously. But I think the only way that we can actually make this a national issue is to have people in local communities, in your communities, going around talking to people, understanding what their barriers were in trying to vote, and getting them involved in things like Let Me Hear and Vote. So essentially, again, when I go around and I talk to people about this youth voter crisis across the country, right, the state of youth voting rights, the first thing I get in New York is like, well, why should we care about this in New York, right? Again, we are a safely liberal blue state, blah, 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 blah. What many people do not know in this state is that we had the second to worst youth voter turnout in the country. That's right. States like Georgia, North Carolina, they had better youth voter turnout rates than us. In New York, in 2018 midterms, only 16.4% of young people turned out to vote.
Does that surprise you? What do you all think about that?
No? Who was first? Oh, who was first? Oh, I want to say maybe California or Oregon, but I have to look back on that.
I think it was Oregon.
Oregon?
We have some questions back here.
I always say Alabama, but I think it's actually Arkansas. One day it's yeah. So that's pretty crazy, right? But I see people are surprised. But that's not a coincidence, right? And the reason why New York had one of the worst youth voter turnout rates in the country is because we didn't have any of those laws in place in 2018 that we passed in 2019. So all the things I mentioned earlier weren't in place by last election, right? And so I think that one was definitely a reason why youth voting rate wasn't higher in New York, because we didn't have things like early voting that other states have had and are trying to push back on. But also, I think there's not a robust conversation in the voting rights community here about taking young people seriously, because of that assumption that young people will automatically vote blue in 2020. And so what's the point of engaging it beyond that conversation, right? And also, I think this is reflective of the fact that New York in general, not just young people, also had one of the worst voter turnout rates in the country. We ranked 48th in 2014 and 42nd in 2016. So in that context, from my understanding, folks that say that, they think about the Electoral College. And so again, they're usually assuming youth voter turnout only matters for things like the presidential election, right? So with the Electoral College, the way that New York usually votes, we usually, most of our Electoral College votes go blue, right? Because of the majority of the state does usually vote liberal, but that's not the case for all of New York State. I came from a school in upstate New York where it was very, very, very much competitive amongst Republicans and Democrats. And it was really important to be cross-partisan in conversations around youth engagement up there. So I think folks usually assume that because the only thing that matters is the presidential election, which is very important in 2020. The way that the votes usually go on that election is blue. So that's what people usually push back.
Good.
But we need to change the way we think about it, right?
Right. Because there are 3 other years of elections and all the local
Exactly.
elections, and also voting is a gateway to
Right.
other forms of democratic engagement, right?
That's a great point, and that is a great lead into my next point. So who here is 18 years old? Yeah? Oh, cool. Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. All right. So that's putting you on the spot.
Who here has a family member
Yeah.
over the age of 18 who lives with you?
everyone.
Oh, wow. Got a lot of adjacent voters in this room.
Well, this is still relevant to all of you because there is a. I was expecting a little more, but it's okay. So the reason why I ask who here is 18 or 17 turning 18 is because we need to talk about voting beyond just mobilizing college-age students, right, who are eligible to vote, but rather talk about all of you in the group, right? What does it mean to grow voters? That is a term used by this group called Circle at Tufts University. Check them out, they have awesome studies. But basically, they are arguing that we need to change the conversation around mobilizing older voters, as in like people like my age, 22 years old, right, 29, 32. But also talk about you. Even though you may not be eligible to vote, what are things that we can do now to make sure that voting will become a habit for you throughout the rest of your life, and that you are getting your peers and your families out to vote and talking about these things. So that term is called growing voters. And I think this map is interesting because it also shows, according to Circle, 2018 voter turnout among 18 and 19-year-olds. And the reason why they pull out this specific age group out of all of the young voters is because it shows whether or not a state, like New York, is doing a good job to put in policies and initiatives that encourage the youngest eligible voters to vote, which is all of you. As you can see here, of course, New York isn't doing so hot. I believe 16.2% of 18 and 19-year-olds voted in New York. So we got a lot of work to do, right? In your schools, in my schools, moving forward. Yeah.
Why is it that there are a few states that are blank? Like they don't have any color?
Yeah, good question. I believe that's because they couldn't get the data
Oh.
for it. Yeah, so it's really hard to get election data, actually, from local election boards, but they did a really good job getting it for the majority of states, for both the national youth turnout, which is what was the other slide I showed, and this data set. Check them out. It's a really big issue in upstate New York. I work with college students in New York State, and some of you might be going to school in upstate New York, right? SUNY's awesome, so I highly recommend it. And there are some poll sites that are like 10 minutes away from campus, and if you don't have a car, you're gonna walk along the highway to get there. There's no buses. How are you gonna get there, right? So other things include access to civic education and advocating for equitable civic education in all schools, no matter what community you come from. And so, to our last 2 points, we need to pass bold reforms that facilitate engagement and push back on all these barriers, plus ones I haven't even mentioned today. And then finally, my biggest project that I want to push forward is thinking beyond the election booth. I want to build a diverse network of youth leaders across the state, like you, to be able to get a seat at the table, right? It's sure we vote and like our votes matter, people are paying attention to us, but what about our actual minds, our ideas, right? What can we do to get a seat? And so I'm going to run through for the last few minutes some policies that, again, we recommend.